anytime I get that kind of reception, I feel like I need to make sure everybody knows Will Smith is not coming. This is good as it's going to get right here. I'll also share with you that anytime I see any piece of that movie, I get the exact same thought. Those people spent $70 million to recreate what I did with nothing. That's just amazing to me. Hey guys, can I have my clicker? Does someone take the clicker away? The parts of my life that I'm going to share with you today all happened in America. But that doesn't matter, because I believe that the most challenging, important, and empowering experiences in all of our lives are the universal experiences. The birth of a child, a graduation, a wedding, a new job or business opportunity, a new home, the loss of a loved one. Those are the universal experiences that create a family called humanity. And I will submit to you that during these most empowering experiences, where you are on the planet is secondary to where you are in your spirit. Those experiences that I just referenced, they probably all feel the same, whether you live in America, Africa, or Asia. They feel the same, whether you live in Jerusalem, Jamaica, or Japan. And as a result of the incredible success of the film and the book, The Pursuit of Happiness, I am frequently asked many of the same questions by people all over the world. Questions like, could you do it again? Yes. If you could change any of the painful things in your past, would you?
No.
No. What would you be doing right now? I'll tell you. There are so many similarities between what the world looked like, the part of my life that you saw in the film, the early 1980s, and today. At that point in time, the United States was coming out of a recession, the greatest one then since World War II. The unemployment rate was 10.9%. Ronald Reagan was president. The safety net for those most in need in educational programs had begun to become strained. And we began to see homelessness become a major issue in America for the very first time. If I recall my history correctly, the early 80s, things were difficult all over the world. Whether it was collapsing international commodity prices, historically high interest rates, or foreign denominated debt, or political turmoil. No matter where you were on the planet, things were difficult. And let's look at where we are today. The entire world is facing major issues and challenges right now. But we are all standing in witness to probably the greatest humanitarian crises in any of our lifetimes. It is estimated that 1% of the entire population of human beings on the planet Earth right now are on the run. They're running from revolutions, conflicts, and wars in the Middle East. They're running from ethnic conflicts and global warming in Western and Southern Africa. They're running from gangs, drugs, and violence in Central America. If all of these people were ever in one place at one time, they would instantly become the 24th largest country on the planet. Bigger than Spain, Canada, South Africa, the the United Kingdom, or Iran. I don't know about where you live, but I know this here. In the Western press, these people are often referred to as migrants, immigrants, refugees. In one country, I'm told they're even called infiltrators. Well, I have a name for them too. I call them survivors. I call them survivors. That's what I'm there for. And you know why I do that? I call them survivors because I know what it feels like to grab your child, everything that you can carry, and your dream, and run for your life. I know that. That's why I call them survivors. With all that as a frame, I'd like to spend the balance of my time with you today expanding on my answers to questions I'm frequently asked. I don't know how many of you all read my first book, The Pursuit of Happiness, but those of you who did, you met my stepfather. And there's a school of thought that says that we are all products of our environment. Well, according to that school of thought, I should have become him. I should have become another alcoholic, wife-beating, child-abusing, illiterate loser. And a lot of people would have said, well, look where he's from. He didn't have a choice. Well, I did have a choice because I saw the light in my mother and then others with whom I did not share a single drop of blood. And I embraced it. Seeing and embracing, those are two separate actions. Now, some people are going to say, well, Chris, aren't you just talking about extended family? No, I'm not. Because just like you can have a dysfunctional family, you can have a dysfunctional extended family. Which is even worse because you chose those people.
That's right.
Wow.
I need to elaborate just a little here when I say I could have become my stepfather. This guy was fond of reminding me every day, I ain't your daddy. You ain't got no daddy. Sometimes he put a 12-gauge shotgun right here just to make his point. And when you grow up with that kind of thing, you can do one of two things. You can perpetuate it, or you can choose to go the other way. I chose because of a promise. I did not know what a commitment was as a 5-year-old boy, but I knew what a promise was. And I made a promise to myself as a 5-year-old boy that became the most important decision that I ever made in my life. That promise was, when I grow up, become a man, and have children, my children are going to know who their father is. That is the single, that's the most important decision I ever made in my life. Let me say that another way. I made the decision that if I had to sleep in a public train station washroom with my child tied on my back as a 28-year-old man, I made that decision as a 5-year-old boy. That became part of what I call my spiritual genetics. And part of my spiritual genetics is the greatest gift that I ever got in my life. I got the gift of being my mother's son. That is the greatest gift I ever got in my life. Oh man. And I have to tell you, my mom telling me every single day, son, you can do or be anything. That was the greatest gift I ever got in my life. And it's very important to say what she did not say. She did not say that you can have anything. She did not say that you could buy anything. She did not say that you're guaranteed, assured, owed, or entitled to anything. She said that you could do or be anything. And for me, man, that was an even bigger statement. Because if you could do or be anything, all this other stuff will come. My mother said to me, son, you can do or be anything. That in essence was the generational transfer of a dream. And I have often wondered, how did my mother know to say these things to me? My mother was born deep in the southern parts of the United States, the daughter of a sharecropper. 1930s, 1940s. Those were not the good old days by any stretch of the imagination. How did she know to say these things to me? There's a scene in the film that reflects what I'm trying to share with you. There's a scene in the film where Will Smith is standing at a payphone. He's trying to make a call. It's raining. He looks down at the coins in his hands and he sees the image of Thomas Jefferson. And he asks himself, how did Thomas Jefferson know to write the words, the pursuit of happiness, into the Declaration of Independence? Not the guarantee, not the entitlement, not the assurance, but the pursuit. How did he know to do that? Writing my first book, The Pursuit of Happiness, was not my idea. I did not want to do it. Because when you do a book like that, if you're going to be totally open and honest, you're going to have to relive some things that you probably would rather not think about. I don't know about anybody else in this room, but I can admit, at that point in my life, I had a lot of tightly packed boxes of stuff in my head that were all marked, fragile, caution, do not touch. And I knew this, if I take the lid off of one of these boxes, it's going to be connected to another box, and another box. I did not want to do it. But one night, 10 years ago, I was receiving an award from a major national organization, the National Fatherhood Initiative. They were recognizing me and a few other men they deemed to have been exceptional dads. The truth of the matter is, any man in this room could have been there. It was just a celebration of fatherhood. And they had an MC who wanted to keep the program rolling, so he kept citing all of these statistics, studies, and reports, all saying the same thing, which was, if you were born into this family, if you lived in this neighborhood, if you grew up in these conditions, this is who you're going to turn out to be. There were no positive outcomes. I sat there silently saying to myself, the extended version of, that's BS. That's BS. Man, I got myself so worked up when I walked up to the podium to get my award. You know what came out of my mouth. I am so glad that I said it, because at the end of that program, in a room full of 1,000 people, so many people came up to me and said, I'm glad you said that, because I'm from that family. I lived in that neighborhood. I grew up in those conditions, and just like you, I chose to go the other way. The last guy to come up to me that night was this guy, James Earl Jones. Wow. And he says to me in that incredible voice, he comes up to me and he says, yes, a lot of it is bullshit, isn't it? And you know what? If Darth Vader says something is, it probably is. That book, The Pursuit of Happiness, the story of my life, but I've always thought of it as the book of us. meaning all of us who had every opportunity to become any of that negative stuff that was right in our faces, but we chose to go the other way. That book became a #1 New York Times bestseller. It's been translated into 45 languages, including 6 dialects of Chinese. It's currently being translated into Arabic for the very first time. Who knew? Who knew? Man, who knew? One person knew. And that one person was my dear friend, Dr. Maya Angelou. Oh my God, I gotta tell you, man, that is the best water I ever had in my life. I got to give me some of that. I am so thankful that once in a while in my life I exhibit what my mother would call the good common sense. Something said to me before it was too late. It was in the fall of 2013. Something said to me, you know what? You haven't seen Dr. Angelou in a little while. You need to go down there and visit with her. I went down to see her at her home in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and she says to me, as only Dr. Angelou could, Mr. Gardner, you do understand, sir, that book was not even about you. That was the story of every father who ever had to be a mother, every mother who ever had to be a father, and everybody who ever had a dream and would not quit. You do understand that, don't you, sir? Man, let me tell you something. Hey, let me tell you something. When Dr. Angelou puts something to you like that, there's only one thing for you to say. Yes, ma'am. Got it. Real clear on it. And I can't stand here and not mention this. I have to tell you. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, we got the opportunity to produce the first and only documentary ever done on the life of Dr. Maya Angelou. And apparently, our filmmakers did a pretty good job because the film was selected to make its world premiere at the Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah. That's a big deal. Sundance looks at 4,000 films, 2,500 features, 1,500 documentaries, but they pick 100 to be a part of the festival. That's a big deal. I did not know what a big deal it was until I called Will Smith to tell him, hey, Will, I want to let you know, man, we got the film done on Dr. Angelou. It's going to premiere at the Sundance Film Festival. And this guy says to me, as only Will Smith could, man, I've been in this business my whole life. I've never had anything premiere at Sundance. And then he said 2 words. The second word was you. Hey, I took it as a compliment. I'm sorry, Will. Thank you, man. Thank you so much, my brother. And that, folks, is that not just the most beautiful little chocolate baby boy in the world? Huh? And no, that is not my son, that's me, man. That is me, 64 years ago. And I have to tell you something. It took me a long time, but I figured this out. The only person in the world that can make me smile like that is her. My mother, Benny Jean. Man, let me tell you something. Those eyes and that smile could either melt your heart or turn you into a pillar of salt. I had both experiences. Sony spent $100 million on marketing that film. And every place that Will Smith and I went all around the world, I talked about my mother. The wit, the wisdom, the lessons of love that she shared with me made everything else I've ever done in my life possible. Whenever I am asked, whatever made you think that you could accomplish half of the things that you have in your life, I can hear my mama's voice. I can hear mama say, son, I've had to do so much with so little for so long that I can do anything with nothing. And that wasn't just something catchy to say. I saw her do it. I saw it with my own two eyes. The film has often been referred to as the ultimate rags to riches story. But for me, it was never about money. For me, it was a love story about a man who was committed to giving his child something that he never had, which was a father. And that's got nothing to do with money. That's got absolutely nothing to do with money. I have to share just a few stories with you about my mom and other people who helped create what I call my spiritual genetics. And it's so remarkable to me that during some of the most empowering moments of your life, no matter how long ago they happened, you can remember it like it happened this morning. I will never forget being a young guy getting ready to watch a college basketball game. It's the college basketball championship game. And the announcer is hyping this game and talking about all the money some of these players were going to make simply because they could run and jump and shoot a ball. And I remember talking out loud saying to the television, wow, man, one day that guy's gonna make $1 million. Thank God my mama heard me say it. Mama heard me say it and she said, son, you know what? If you want to, one day you can make $1 million. Whoa. Before she said those words, the thought had never entered my mind. But after she said it, the thought never left my mind. It never left my mind. My mom went on to say the most incredible thing, which was, baby, if you want to make the team, go to the gym. But if you want to own the team, go to the library. Huh? Oh, man. And you know what makes that so crazy? What makes that so crazy is 2 years ago, that still gets better. What makes that so crazy is 2 years ago, I failed in an attempt to buy a professional basketball team. I put together a group, and we bid $700 million to buy the Atlanta Hawks of the National Basketball Association. $700 million, second highest price ever offered for an NBA franchise. The idea was to buy that team and move it to Vegas. $700 million and lost. And I was like, Mom, girl, you did not tell me about this part. But that's okay, you know why? Because that was practice. Quincy Jones once told me the best singing he ever heard was Michael Jackson at practice. Phil Jackson once said the best basketball he ever saw was Michael Jordan at practice. I like practice. I'll be back soon. I'll be back very soon. Remember, you heard it here first. There's a scene in the film that reflects what I'm trying to share with you. As you ultimately saw it on the screen, it was not originally written this way. In the original screenplay, on the basketball court, when that little boy throws up that ball and says, I'm going pro, the father says, forget it. That'll never happen. I was no good at it, so that means that you can't do it. I waited until we were going to film that scene that day, and I went up to Will Smith and I said, you can't tell that to that little boy. Because that's not what my mama told me. We had a very heated discussion about it. Me, Will Smith, our director, Gabriel Mochino, and one of the producers. The producer's position was, well, the father's got to keep it real with the kid. My position was, man, you live in Hollywood, what you know about keeping it real? Man, we argued for 30 minutes and finally it was Will Smith who says, you know what? Chris is right, because my mama told me the same thing. We tore up the original script and this was the result.
Hey. Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me. All right? You got a dream. You got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.
That happened on the spot. On the spot, just like that. And my mother saying to me, son, you can do or be anything. Apparently I took it too far because I made up my mind I was going to become that guy. Miles Davis. Mama said I could be anybody, I chose Miles. I studied music theory. I played trumpet for 9 years. I got pretty good. And when I say I wanted to become a Miles Davis, man, I had it bad. I had it so bad, people would ask me as a little boy, what are you going to be when you grow up? I had it so bad, I started talking like Miles, and I'd tell them, I'm going to be Miles Davis. Thank God again, Mama heard me say something one time. Mama heard me say it one time, and she said, son, we need to talk. We sat down at the kitchen table. Now, I don't know how this worked at your house, but at our house, when you got called to the kitchen table, and it was not supper time, that was not good news. That was kind of like going to court. A ruling was about to come down. We sit down at the kitchen table and my mom says to me with all the love that only a mother has, son, you're pretty good with that thing, but you can't be Miles Davis. There's only one and he's got that job. Now when your mama put it to you like that, you've got to feel that. And I had to look at the facts. The facts were, at 18 years of age, Miles Davis was in New York City playing with Quincy Jones and Dizzy Gillespie. At the same age, I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, playing with some boys named Pookie and Ray Ray. Hey, we were good, but it wasn't going to happen. But it was also about this time, as a young man, I heard Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak one night. As a matter of fact, it was the last speech he ever gave in his life. He was assassinated the very next day. He was speaking to a group of garbage men down in Memphis, Tennessee. And his message to those men that night was, Whatever you're going to do with your life, you should seek to become the best at it. I believe his exact words were, if you're going to be a garbage man, you should seek to become the best garbage man and sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. And right there, I made the second most important decision that I ever made in my life. That decision was, I'm going to become world class at whatever I do with my life. Not good at it, not pretty good at it, but world class at it. And let's define world class and keep it simple. Someplace right now in your business, there's a conversation going on, and the question has come up, who's the best in the business? Somebody ought to say your name. Same conversation, same question. Who's the best in the business? If nobody says your name, then you've got work to do. Same conversation, same question. Who's the best in the business? If nobody says your name and you don't care, get out of the business. You'll never be any good. If you don't care, get out. But the ultimate validation in that scenario, the ultimate validation, when that question comes up, who's the best in the business? The ultimate validation is when somebody who does not like you says your name. Where the folks who would not take your phone calls are now hoping that you'll return their calls. Where the people who would not hire you yesterday cannot afford you today. That's when you know. That's when you know, okay? You know what I know? I don't, but I'm working on it every single day. I don't spend a lot of time on YouTube, but I did see this one piece that puts into perspective what world class could look like. Whatever your trade, craft, job, or position is, this is what world class could look like. Check this out. Guys, come on, man. Right there. This is what world class could look like. Did I just break this thing? Okay, you'll fix it. Every time I see that clip, I keep waiting for the helicopter pilot to miss that shot. He makes it every time. I did a little additional research and I found out the helicopter pilot, that was not a he, that was a she. That's what world class can look like. And I will never forget the very first time that I walked into a big time Wall Street trading room. The phones were ringing off the hook. People were screaming and shouting out orders. Bodies were flying all over the place. Tickets were getting stamped. It would look like chaos to anybody else. For me, it was like I was reading a sheet of music, and I could feel it. And I knew this is where I'm supposed to be. It was not, I think I can do this. It was not, I like to try that. No, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where I'm supposed to be at this point, at this time of my life. And then I met these two guys, Gary Shimano and Marshall Geller. At this point in their careers, they were both managing general partners at a magical place called Bear Stearns in San Francisco. And partners at Bear Stearns meant they loved each other and hated each other, and never agreed on anything except me. I was hired because they both agreed this guy does not have an MBA, but he does have a PSD. And at Bear Stearns, that was the highest degree anybody could ever have. PSD. Poor, smart, with a deep desire to become wealthy. And I was qualified. This is where I'm supposed to be. The truth of the matter is, this is where I was. My son and I, at the first home we got to live in, after a year of living on the streets, train stations, bus terminals, hotel lobbies, public libraries, outside in the park if the weather permitted. And yes, train station washrooms. Our new home, 2 blocks away from the last train station that we ever had to sleep in. And I have to share this with you. Some of the most important decisions that I ever made in my life, I made in the train station washroom. There was a highly polished piece of sheet metal over the sink. It wasn't a mirror, but it served as a mirror. And every day I had to wash my little boy up and ask myself some very difficult questions. Questions like, why did this happen? Why did that happen? What's going to happen next? But the hardest question that I had to ask and answer every single day was, how did I get here? And the answer was brutal. The answer was, I drove here. I had something to do with the situations and circumstances that had become my life. I drove here, but that was the key, because I knew the second I said it, well, if I drove here, then I can drive out of here. You can't change something until you own it. I drove here. And my son, some of you may recall the image of my son in the film. Jaden Smith plays my son as a 5-year-old. The reality is, at this point in our journey, my son was 14 months old. He's still in diapers. That changes everything. And the hardest thing that I had to do every day as a working, homeless, single parent, child care. Think about it. When you've got young children, next to your rent or your mortgage, the biggest expense you got every month is what? Food. Child care. I don't know what the numbers are where you live, but in the United States, child care for an infant can cost as much as tuition at a state university. And the hardest thing that I had to do every day was walk out of that door, leave a little boy with somebody I did not know, and hope everything was okay. Man, I will never forget how he would scream and cry every day when I walk out of that door. But I was screaming and crying on the inside. I was screaming and crying, and all I could say to him was, I'll be back. I'll be back. I was screaming and crying because I knew those were words I had never heard my father say to me. But I was really crying tears of joy because I knew I was keeping that promise that I made to myself as a 5-year-old boy. I was crying tears of joy, man. My son and I were together every single day. Golden Gate Park Children's Playground, San Francisco. You can look at that one picture and tell neither one of us looks particularly happy at that time. I just had to explain to him right there, I couldn't buy him any candy. It was candy or bus fare. And if I buy you some candy, we gotta walk home. Having to deny your child anything is painful. And I would not know for many, many years how important all that time we spent together was until we were doing the Oprah Winfrey Show. And she asked my son, you were a baby. What do you remember about this time in your life? And what he said was, all I remember is every time I looked up, my father was there. That's all I remember. He never knew. He never knew we were homeless. And he did not need to know. He did not know that some of the times that he ate and I didn't, it wasn't because I wasn't hungry. He didn't need to know that. He did not know that some of the times we both ate and got a hotel room, that was only made possible because I just sold blood. He didn't need to know that. And I say he did not need to know that because that's what fathers do. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes the best father is a good mama. Somebody ought to say amen. Amen. I'm sorry? Amen. Hey, look, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but look at this little guy. Anybody else, you ever wish your child could have stayed there just a little while longer? They grow up too fast. You can see he's sitting there dreaming of what they're walking in his father's shoes. That's a beautiful dream. All little boys, all little girls, when they want to walk in their mother's or their father's shoes. I will submit to you that one of the most difficult conversations that you're ever going to have with your child is the day that you have to explain to them, you can walk in my shoes, but the journey must be your own. And speaking of journeys, man, I had just flown 26 hours straight to get from Cape Town, South Africa, to be in San Francisco, California, for the very first day of filming the movie. And you know what we're filming on the first day? The end of the movie. That's Hollywood. We're going to shoot the end first, so nobody will ever know. This is the scene where Will Smith playing me comes down the stairs. He claps his hands a certain way. He's got the job. There's no dialogue. You can feel the energy coming through the screen. That was all made possible because this guy had a plan. Unbeknownst to me, he said to me from the beginning, I need you to be on the set every day for 16 weeks of filming. Because playing you is going to be harder than playing Muhammad Ali. Everybody knows Ali. They know the stories. They know what happened. They know how Ali reacted. Nobody knows you. So for 17 weeks of filming, while everybody else is watching him, he's watching me. How I move, how I express myself, how I show tension. This guy had me down to the point that he has to sign my name to a contract in the film signs an exact replica of my signature. Man, if I ever have a problem with identity theft, I know who I'm looking for. This guy had a plan. In my last book, Start Where You Are, I talk about the importance of having not just a plan, but what is plan A? And I put forth this concept I call the C5 complex. Your plan must be clear, concise, compelling, consistent, and committed. You've got to have a plan A. And when you're talking about doing something that you're truly passionate about, there is no plan B. Just a few examples. Anybody know that little boy?
Michael Jordan.
No? You know him now? That was plan A, not plan B. This little girl became this woman because she was committed to plan A, not plan B. And this little guy became that man because he was committed to plan A, not plan B. Somebody need to write this down. Now, somebody say this with me. Plan B sucks.
Plan B sucks.
Say it like you mean it one time. Plan B sucks. Man, if plan B was any good, it'd be plan A. Plan B distracts from plan A. Some people are going to say, well, Chris, those were all good examples, but those were all young people. And life had never really knocked them down. They never had to come back from a serious setback. Yeah? Okay. What about this guy? Anybody know him? I bet you've been to his restaurant. He started that company when he was 56 years old. Anybody know this guy? No? I bet you consumed his product. He created that product when he was 58 years old. And just a little note, first year sales Coca-Cola, $25. Everybody knows this guy. What you don't know is he didn't sell his first piece of chicken till he was 62. My favorite in this crowd is that man right there. Man, when you go to Italy, you're going to see some of the most beautiful pieces of art, sculptures, paintings, drawings, all created by this man. But the one thing that stays with me is this quote. I feel like I'm still learning. He said that at 87. Anybody in here over 87 years of age? No? Over 87? Good, you're still learning too. This guy standing between Will Smith and I is the guy responsible for the film The Pursuit of Happiness Ever Happened. I'll introduce the young lady later. That's the guy that saw me doing an interview on television with Barbara Walters. He turns to his wife and he says, I'm going to get the rights to that story. And Will Smith is going to be nominated for an Academy Award for playing that guy. His wife will tell you, she said to him, you need to stop smoking that stuff. Her point was, some of the biggest talent agents in Hollywood are all seeing this thing and saying the same thing. Sure enough, the piece we do with Barbara Walters runs on a Friday night. Monday morning, the phone jumps off the hook. The first guy is one of the top talent agents in Hollywood, and he talks just like this. Chris, me and my agency represents the biggest names in Hollywood. Nothing happens in this town without us, and we want to represent you. Cool, let's talk. Turns out my lady and I were on the way to Hawaii for vacation. And I said to Mr. Super Agent, I'm going to be in the Los Angeles International Airport in the Red Carpet Club between 12 and 2. Come on out, bring a contract, and I'll sign with you. Sure enough, Mr. Super Agent gets through security at Los Angeles International Airport without a ticket, finds me in the Red Carpet Club, whips out the contract, and guess what? He did not have a pen. The next two people that we asked, excuse me, can I borrow your pen? Can I use your pen for a second?